I'm writing my thesis right now and reading the Iliad, so that's what this is. Hermione, left behind by her mother and father, the spoils and wager of war, played with her dolls, the spoils and wager of war and epic poetry. Hermione has been stolen, said Hermione, and which of you will hold my hand and walk beside me into war, and hold open the door of war, or allow me to hold open the door of war for her, and wrap her hands around my wrists, and also offer her wrists to my grasping hands? And who will thus form a chair of forearms with me, on which our spoils Hermione may sit and ride between us, winning? The speech of Hermione spun the fluffing in her soft crowd. First rose the plump arm of Hermione. Hermione of the flaxen hair and battle-weary Hermione of the dog wounds stood beside her. Glass-eyed Hermione gave her word, Hermione, and then Hermione once fed on honey, Hermione stained with blood, and the two Hermiones of the woolen hair, valiant daughters of the war-crier Hermione. Hermione of the netted face fell next onto the growing pile of warriors, and before Hermione split at the neck, and young Hermione with bones ready for exploit. Hermione arranged her dolls into lines, but they had rounded feet and would not stand. They marched into war as a pile that strained her fingers at the webs. Hermione pinched her needle to the arm of Hermione once fed on honey to run it through Hermione of the nice clay head, but the tip was round from cutting symbols into rocks, and it would not stab, and it would not stab. Hermione of the sticky lips traded needle for spindle and brought it down hard. Shards of the nice clay head of Hermione rained on Troy like painted beads from a broken string, and/or painted beads from the string around Hermione's white neck caught by the spear of Hermione split at the neck, and/or a shard entered the gape of her throat and sliced off her tongue at the base, and/or a shard lodged in her fluff a barbed little tongue. It scored the backs of her sticking lips. The square was winning and/or losing. Hermione named all of her dolls for herself, though she meant two as her mother and father, the wages and wager of war. Her dolls took the name Hermione when they stopped giving her comfort and/or when they stopped giving her dolls. Okay, in the next section, she has a pet turtle. Turned turtle need not be just two more words for capsize. On a feast diet of fibrous protein and/or what persisted to grow from Hermione's head, she also cut her hair off, Hermione swelled into an iridescent green vessel of leisure. A titanic bow of seaweed hunched like a parrot on her neck. Hermione took great pleasure in riding her to sea for 9 and/or 20-ish much-sung years. Hermione, 8, laid waste where she landed as a matter of course. She rewarded Hermione prettily, adorning her bow and stern little beak with heavy gold beads and/or the sleek blackest stones clenched in the hands of those corpses who rise not infrequently from the beds of all bodies of water. By 9, Hermione accepted and/or designed the just punishment of being unable to go home for 20-ish years. On the span of Hermione, she set up her gardens in bed, rigged her skirt for a sunscreen, and lay herself back for a spell. Girl and turtle, viewed like this from a distance, were often taken for some ship. 13-ish years in, some raggedy ass beached himself on a flipper. Hermione had harvested more olive paste and/or eternal life than she needed, and offered him a smidge and a restorative sit. He declined with emphasis, for it must have been 7 years, eating her out wholeheartedly of olives, until she declared her sentence served, and with emphasis allowed his departure. Hermione, maybe 13 and/or generally gung-ho, sailed Hermione to the American Revolutionary War, where she disembarked with a handsome new cock and/or a symbolic cockade pinned to her tricorn hat. There she met a gravelly man who stayed on the water, crafting less ridiculous caps for sailors to wear in the long winters of peacetime. He knitted green wool into snug swirls on 2 daggers flashing like nothing. Valuable heat did leach from her scalp sometimes. She totally and/or never crushed on and/or crushed the capper. We know this from the headgear she wore with increasing fondness in her later years, a skin-tight green wool and/or turtle and/or watertight and submersible plastic shell and/or swim cap. On each green shore, Hermione, and respite from her burden Hermione, took a long draught of air and an agreeable shit. Hermione deposited a railroad of hair on each island. It dropped from her squat a single peristaltic English braid. From just one movement, creatively knitted, lonely cappers have outfitted both sides of whole wars. Hermione, many, and or general of many, let her sweet spoils of a grown woman turtle go free in the end. Raised at the plentiful head of Hermione, Hermione has never since needed to eat and or finds herself always pulling at the scalps of those corpses who still list across the beds of all bodies of water. Only diving to feed has the staunch little turtle been mistaken for capsize and or for, in her mirror-eyed surfeit, a submersible craft. In other versions of the story, Hermione ate her way out of the original net, nobody's party barge. Thanks.